Hello, I'm Doug Watches. Welcome to the Locksmith DVD training program. The subject of this course is rekeying locks. Rekeying locks is one of the most common tasks performed by locksmiths, and a good understanding of the process is essential. After completing this course, you should be able to list 10 tools used in rekeying locks. List 5 types of information normally included on a pin kit chart. List the steps for rekeying a Kwikset 400 series lock. List the steps for rekeying a Schlage deadbolt. Describe the process for removing the lock cylinder from the locks of at least 4 different lock manufacturers. Explain the basic process for the disassembly of a cylindrical lock. Explain that the Schlage A-series wafer lock must be removed from the door to be rekeyed. Describe the development of the modern pin tumbler lock. List at least 5 different modern lock technologies and give the name of the inventor. This course is divided into 6 parts. Part 1, tools used in rekeying locks. Part 2, how to rekey locks. Part 3, removing the lock cylinders from common locks. Part 4, the disassembly of a cylindrical lock set. Part 5, suggested practice. And Part 6 is a bonus section on the history of locks, Part 3. This is a lab pin kit, and this is one of the first things you're going to need to get a hold of. There's other manufacturers and suppliers of pin kits. Lab is one of the major suppliers. You can see that inside there's all kinds of pins. You have basically 3 groups of pins. You have bottom pins, top pins, and then little tiny ones are master pins, which we'll look into more in master keying locks. But they have different size kits. This is an 003 kit. You can get an 005 kit. I keep one of each. I have an 005 kit on my van. I keep an 003 kit here in my shop. And the main difference is the 005 kit has fewer pins that you have to supply, but the 003 kit, obviously by carrying more sizes, does get a closer fit sometimes than the 005 kit can get for you. So if we just look at a few of the pins here on this back row, you'll notice that each one of the bins is numbered, and you'll notice that there's an increase of 3 thousandths from bin to bin, because this is a 3 thousandths kit. If this were a 5 thousandths kit, then they would be every 5 thousandths. Even in this kit, the top pins are incremented out at 5 thousandths. So here we can see, let me get a hold of a bottom pin. The bottom pins are normally going to be pointed on one end. So you can see the point on that, that's a bottom pin. Here you can see top pins, and you'll notice that, as I mentioned, these are incremented every 5 thousandths. This bin's 180 thousandths, 185 thousandths in this bin, this one's 190, and so on. And again, these were going to be flat on both ends, so that pin can go in to the lock cylinder from either direction, whereas the bottom pins, they need to go in with the pointed end down towards the key. You know, these are master pins, and again, as I mentioned, these are going to be incremented in the 3 thousandths increments. You have 42 thousandths, 45 thousandths, and then it should be 48 thousandths, but there must not be much use for 48 thousandths, so it jumps to 51 thousandths, then 54 thousandths, and so on. So they don't have like every one. They have the ones that are going to be most called for in the most standard of locks that you're going to be rekeying. You can see how small these are. These are very small. You're going to need tweezers to get a hold of these master pins. Probably, if you have good dexterity, I mean, you can grab them with your fingers, and I often do that, but with the very smallest ones, often you're going to need to use tweezers. Now, if we look on the back panel, as we open up the lab kit, on the back panel we're going to find a chart that provides the rekey information for some of the most common brands of locks. And you can see there's quite a few of them in this kit here. Not every kit's going to have this many, but this is what's available in this kit, all of these different charts. And I'm going to just kind of zero in on the Schlage chart and the Kwikset chart. And we're going to do Kwikset first, and I'm going to explain some of the information that you're going to find on that chart. Okay, so here we're looking at the back panel for Kwikset, the chart for the information to rekey Kwikset locks. You'll notice here at the top it says 0.023, 23 thousandths, and that is the increment that Kwikset uses between the different cuts. So like for a number 1 cut you got 328 thousandths, that's the depth of cut, but for a number 2 cut it's a difference of 23 thousandths, is 305, and then 282 and so on. If you do a number 1 cut, it calls for the bottom pin here in this row of 171 thousandths. So if you do a number 3 cut, you'd use 216 thousandths pin. Number 4 is 240, 6 is 285, and so on. This row here gives master pins. We're not going to look into those right now. We'll talk about those when we do our course on master keying. If you need a top pin for a Kwikset lock, the recommended pin is 180 thousandths. Now there's some more information here at the bottom, and the information is going to be again different for each manufacturer, but here it says the effective diameter of the plug is 498 thousandths, almost a ½ inch. It's not quite a ½ inch. The first cut, the distance to the first cut is 247 thousandths, and the distance between the cuts, the center of the cuts, this is between center cut, it's 150 thousandths. And then it has a max of 5. Max stands for maximum adjacent cuts, and so you could not have you could not go from a 1 to a 7. Now that's not going to be a problem here, because that's normally anyway, a 7 is not even used in a Kwikset lock. Normally the deepest cut in a Kwikset lock is 6. So you can basically use any of the cuts in Kwikset. From 1 to 6 it's 5, 2 to 6 is 4, and so on. 3 to 6 is only 3. So you're not going to violate the max. And what this is again the maximum adjacent cuts. So you don't want a difference of more than 5. But 5 is workable. Okay, if we move over and look at the Schlage lock now, we can see again the same basic information: depth of cut, what the cuts are, 0 through 9 for Schlage, the bottom pins, again master pins that we'll talk about later, and then the top pins. Now notice that Schlage has a difference in their cuts of 15 thousandths, whereas we saw in the Kwikset it was 23 thousandths. So it's a much smaller increment in the Schlage pins. Now also notice here that there's a difference in the top pin, that if you use a shorter bottom pin, then you use a longer top pin, and if you use a long bottom pin, then you use a shorter top pin. So coming on down towards the bottom of the chart here, you can again notice that the effective diameter here is 500 thousandths, or 1/2 inch. The distance to the first cut is 231 thousandths. The distance between the cut centers is 156 thousandths. And also notice here there's another note here that it says that if you need to use the 237 thousandths pin here, that they recommend that you take a bottom pin of 237 thousandths and turn it upside down to fill in here in cuts 1 through 3, or 0 through 3. So look at the notes that come along with each one of the charts. Notice that in Schlage there's a max of 7. Again, it's difficult to violate that, but you could violate it. They go 0 through 9. So if you went from that would violate the max. You could go 2 with 1 cut, and the next cut could be a 9. But you could not go from 1 to 9. That would be too big of a cut. And what would happen is that when you cut the 9, it would eat away part of your number 1 cut, or eat away all of your number 1 cut. so that it's just not workable with that grade of difference between the two cuts. The biggest difference that they're recommending that you have is 7. So I want to go ahead and explain a couple of terms here. The effective diameter or working diameter for the different manufacturers. And we saw that in Schlage, their effective diameter was 500 thousandths, or basically a half an inch. So for a number 4 cut, it said the depth of the cut was 275 thousandths. Now this is a Schlage key, SC1 keyway, and this is a number 4 cut right here. And that's measured from the bottom of the blade. So you can see that on the number 4 cut, we got 275 thousandths. And the bottom pin for a number 4 cut is 225 thousandths. So you have the 275 and the 225 give us a 500 thousandths, which reaches the shear line for that pin stack. Now you will need additional pin kits if you intend to work on other manufacturers of locks, especially the high security locks like Medico. We cover Medico in course number 18. But again, the lab kit is not going to work for your high security locks. So just be aware of that when you get to these other types of locks, which pretty much fall in the category of high security locks, you will need different pin kits. We cover Medico in course 18. We'll cover multi-lock in course number 19, and they of course have their own pin kit. And then I have a kit that I just made up because it was economical to do it, to get the pins that I needed. But the Schlage Primus lock, you're going to need a kit for that when you begin working on the Schlage Primus locks, and we cover that in course number 20. Okay, let's take a look at some of the other little tools that we're going to need in rekeying. You're going to need a couple of small screwdrivers, a flat tip and then a Phillips tip screwdriver, and occasionally you may need something a little different, but basically 2 screwdrivers on your desk is what you're going to need. I recommend you get a scribe and always have a nice paper clip around. This is a wire tool that comes with many locks to depress the wafer to get the handle off. So little wire tools like this, like I say, even a large paper clip can come in handy for poking down retaining wafers. These are all plug followers here, and they have different ends. Some are hollow, most of these are solid. Notice the ends are different as far as the width of the gap on these. As I said, some of these are hollow. Here you have real thin ears for the Schlage F cylinder locks, but you can get by. Once you get more skilled at rekeying, you'll find that oftentimes you can get by with just using one plug follower. But it is nice to have several different end pieces around to match up to the end pieces of the lock that you're working with. Here's a set that comes from HPC with 4 different size followers. You will encounter different sizes, but for the most part you're only going to be working with the standard size, which measures right at 500 thousandths, and the common followers will work for nearly all of the locks that you're going to encounter. And like I said, once in a while you will come across one that is a different diameter. Okay, some other tools that'll come in handy is a good pair of tweezers. These tweezers, the ends are fitted to grab the pins with. And this one here, for example, is by Lab, the same people that make the pin kit. They make a nice little pair of tweezers. If you want a larger set, you can look at again the locksmith tools section of the suppliers, and you'll find different size tweezers available. These are key gauges. This is from Lab again, and this measures the cuts of a key. It measures 5 different manufacturers. It's got Westlock, Master, Weiser, Schlage, and Kwikset. And then this is a little key gauge that Schlage puts out, and it measures the slug cuts of the key. But what's nice about it is it has these little slots that will help get off the clips on the back of the plugs, and it also has a little tool to depress the locking wafer with to get the handle off. So that's a good little tool. I recommend both of those tools. And as I mentioned in the last course on lockpicking, you're going to need a set of lockpicks for use also in rekeying, because you're going to have to be able to get the plugs turned, and if there's no key, you either are going to have to pick the lock open or shim the lock open. And we'll talk more about shimming in the next course, but you will be using your lock picks again a lot in rekeying locks. This is a Kwikset tool. You're going to need one of these to remove the lock cylinders from Kwikset locks. This is a cap removal tool. You don't necessarily have to have this, but it makes it a lot easier to remove and then replace the screw caps that are on the end of many plugs that you will encounter. It has two different size tools, one on each end for different size caps. Another item that is very handy is a plug holder. If you're working with a plug, you need to sit it down for a minute. You don't want your pins to fall out. Just have a plug holder handy to stick the plug in. Also, probably a small pair of vice grips would come in handy, and then you're also going to need a small vise from time to time. And occasionally we're also going to be able to use a pair of snap ring pliers, so you want to have a pair of those in your toolkit. Now in rekeying locks, one thing that is very helpful to have is a bucket of keys. And I have two buckets of keys. These are basically the SC1 keyway, and these are the Kwikset KW1 keyway. And if you have a bucket of keys like this, when you want to rekey a lock, you can simply go into your bucket and pull one out and use that for your pattern key to key your lock up to. So try to save keys that are in good condition, and preferably original manufacturer keys. That you're going to start coming across key blanks, and you're going to come across the original keys where you have extras. And when you have the extra keys, just toss those into your key bucket, and you'll start having a collection of these pretty quickly. Since Kwikset is probably the most popular brand of residential lock in the country, we're going to look at it next. In this first activity, we're going to rekey the very popular Kwikset 400 series lock. There are a number of other popular Kwikset locks. We provide information on the Kwikset Titan and the Kwikset Ultramax in course number 16. I'm going to rekey this Kwikset lock, and I want to just talk about this briefly and explain a little bit about this lock, because this lock is so popular that there are just millions and millions of these, and not only of the Kwikset brand, but there are other locks that are basically the same design with different names. So it's really important to understand how it works. Normally you have to take this lock off the door to rekey it. There is a tool on the market that will take this lock cylinder out of here. We'll just pull it out, but without that tool you'll need to take it off the door. It has two screws that hold it on. Take the handle off, and of course this latch part would stay in the center of the door. But what I want to show you first and get you to think about as you take these off the door, you need to pay attention to which way the door swings. Normally you can see that there's a C shape in this latch assembly that has this connecting piece passes through that. This normally points towards the hinges. So it's important to kind of pay attention to that so that you can get the lock set back in correctly. So the same thing would apply here, that that the tops or the outer edges of this C shape would normally point toward the hinges. Okay, now the reason that's important is that this lock set will go back in either way. So I mean, you could turn this 180 degrees and it would still work, but you want to try to get it so that the bottom of the keyway is down. That's the correct position to have the lock installed. Okay, now to start with, you're going to need a little tool like this one. This is a Kwikset tool. I've actually filed this one out a little bit. I think it works a little bit better in removing some clips and things that I use it for. But they're only a couple of bucks. You can get these from your supplier, and that'll be used to push this out. This lock cylinder is held in here by two springs. There's one on this side and one on this side, and this goes in to the back of that lock cylinder and grabs those springs and pushes that lock cylinder out of there. Now the first thing we need to do is to take out this spindle, and the way we do that is we turn it. You'll notice that there's a little piece here that kind of sticks up off of the spindle, and if you just watch that, you can see that if we position it up like that, that's the easiest way to get that out. And what's going on as I turn that back and forth is this is the locking mechanism. If you look right here, you can see this go up and down right here. I'm going to hold that a little closer to the camera and turn that. See it go down, back up. Okay, when it's up, it's locked. When it's down, it's now unlocked. So we want to turn this spindle so that this piece that sticks up is pointing straight at this post right here. Then we take this end of the wrench, we put it right in here, down underneath here, and we twist that in there, and there's a spring-loaded mechanism here that retains this spindle. So as we push that in like that, it releases that spindle and it will come out. So, just to make sure everyone can see that, I'm going to hold that up to the camera so we can get a good view of that. And again, here's your little tool. Goes right at the top of this spring-loaded mechanism, goes underneath and turns. Now you can use anything for this. You could use a screwdriver or whatever, but you're going to need this little tool, and it's ideal for this. So just like that, once you push it in, you can pull the spindle out. Okay, now the next step is to use the other end, and we stick it in to this hole right here. Now you'll notice there still is a little door here. We'll try to get a good view of that. The door is right here. Right here. This here's got to be pushed in to get this tool. So you kind of go at an angle and grab that door and slide that down in there. Get it down inside. That's how you do it. Now you want your tool lined up with these posts. Now you don't want to turn like this or like this. You want it lined up with the post. Then you push down and it'll hit the springs, and sometimes the cylinder will just pop out like so. Okay, so I put that back in, and I'm going to show you now. If it doesn't just pop out, just keep a small piece of wood handy. Just We're going to just tap that on the wood a little bit, just very, very lightly. And you can see that it'll come out. You know, these are the springs here that were holding the lock. You need to check those once it's out. You may need to bend those back a little bit. There is a snap ring clip on the back holding the plug that we're going to take off. And again, we can use the same tool that we were using and just push that off. And just lay it right there. Try to get in the habit of just, whenever you take a part off, just line them up across the top of your work areas so you know the order that they go back in. Okay, now with the clip off the back, we can just push the plug out. Just like so. And now we're ready to rekey this lock. So we got all 5 pins here, all lined up nice and flush. They work for this key, but the owner wants a different key for this lock. So we're going to just toss these out. Okay, so we're going to go to our bucket of keys and pull us out a Kwikset key to use to rekey this lock to. This is a little tool, key gauge. It's made by Lab. Talked about them already as a manufacturer of tools for locksmith work. And this particular key gauge will do 5 different manufacturers. We're interested in the Kwikset, which is this one right here, the bottom slot. And it's very simple to use. All you do is put the key in there. You start with the first space. Remember that we start at the bow with most keys. We start at the bow, and that's the count out. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going to measure the number 1 space first. And again, very simply, just take the tool, put the key in there in the number 1 space, push it down as far as it goes, and then read the number directly above it. In this case, it's a 4. Then we'll do the next space will be the number 2 space. It goes down to 5. So we got 4, 5. You want to keep the key nice and straight up and down in the gauge. That's another 5. So we have 4, 5, 5. The number 4 is a 1. And the number 5 space is a 3. So 4, 5, 5, 1, 3 are the cuts on this key. Now we're using an 003 lab kit, so I simply look at the back panel on the lab kit, and I know that a number 4 pin for a Kwikset would be a 240. So I grab a 240, and that goes in the number 1 chamber. You see it fits nice and flush. Then we add 2 5s, and 5s are 261. So we're going to need 2 of those. And those go in the 2nd and 3rd chambers. And again, fitting nice and flush. So we know those are the right pins. And we had a 1. And with Kwikset, a 1 is a 171. Goes in the 4th chamber. And then a 3 would be a 216. Goes in the 5th chamber. And we have our plug filled. I always turn my plug so it's at 3 o'clock to the chambers, with the chambers being at 12 o'clock. I just push it in, then I turn it back and let the pin, and then very carefully take the key out. If I just pull this out, it's possible this plug can come out and all the top pins will come flying out. Put my thumb and finger against the plug and gently pull the key until at least one of the pins drops down into the plug. That will hold it. But you want to be careful, otherwise you'll pull it out, all your pins come flying out, and you have to rebuild the lock. But that's it, it's keyed up. We want to put our clip on the back. And we have our new key, just like that. Back in. Now, as I mentioned, it's you always want to kind of know which way the door swings so that you can get the bottom of the keyway down. That's the correct way to install the lock. And I know you'll see many locks that are not installed correctly out there. You know, for whatever reason, but as a locksmith, we want to try to always have them installed correctly. So if the door with the hinges, again, the top of the C pointing towards the hinges, I know that the bottom of the lock would go, keyway would go down. And so then once I am sure I have that right, I just push that in. It should just snap back in there. It's like so. And then all we have to do is put our spindle back in. You can just take the same tool that you used before, put it right in the end of the spindle and just push down on it. Turn it back and forth, make sure that it is operating properly, and that lock is ready to go. Okay, now here's the chart that is on the back, on the inside cover of the pin kit, the lab pin kit that we use to pull our pins to rekey our lock. Now with our key was 45513, and we can see that with the number 4 cut, it calls for a bottom pin of 240. With the number 5 cut, and we had 2 number 5 cuts, remember it went 45513, so we would have needed 2 of the 261s. The number 1 cut was a 171, and the number 3 cut was a 216. Let's review the steps that we just went through in rekeying this Kwikset key and a knob lock. First, we remove the lock from the door. 2, remove the key from the lock. 3, turn the spindle tab to point at the stem. 4, depress the spindle retainer. 5, remove the spindle. 6, insert the Kwikset tool. 7, push out the lock cylinder. 8, remove the plug retainer clip. 9, insert the key and turn the key 45 to 90 degrees. Use a follower to push the plug out. Dump the old pins out. Check for master pins. Select a new key. Measure the key with the key gauge. Pull the pins from the pin kit. Insert the new pins into the plug. Replace the plug in the shell. Replace the plug retainer clip. Replace the lock cylinder into the knob. Replace the spindle. Then test the new key and install the lock. Please take just a moment to like the video and also subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.